As students returned to college campuses this fall, the nation saw a spike in coronavirus cases. Not so here at Stony Brook University, where positive COVID-19 incidents have remained minimal and very manageable. Good afternoon. I'm Larry Zacharies, Interim Chief of Police and Assistant Vice President for Campus Safety. And today, I'm happy to welcome back my colleagues who will talk with us about what we're doing right, how students are stepping up to fuel our success, and our plans and recommendations to keep our campus going strong into the winter, spring, and beyond. I'd like to introduce or reintroduce my colleagues, Dr. Marissa Bisiani, Assistant Vice President, Student Health, Wellness, and Prevention Services, Dr. Rick Gatteau, Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students in the Division of Student Affairs, and Dr. Shelley Germana, Associate Provost for Academic Success in the Division of Undergraduate Education. And I'd like to invite everyone on Facebook Live to join the conversation on this afternoon's Beyond the Expected podcast, aptly named Coming Back Safe and Strong, Students Step Up, as we look at campus life about 7 weeks into our fall semester. Marissa, Rick, Shelley, thanks again for joining us. At our last podcast on August 24th, we were just on the brink of starting the fall semester like no other. Today, we're here to celebrate some successes and look to the future for more. Let's get the conversation going with a question for each of you. Tell us a little bit about your role, then we'll get into where we are so far in the semester. Share some particular experiences or something students have shared with you that stands out in your mind. And I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with Marissa, who I would mention is a proud alumnus and who has a son who is a freshman that just started here in the Honors College, I believe, as well. So from your perspective, which is certainly unique and personal, give us some, sort of a look back as to, where we've been the last couple of weeks and perhaps some things that have been shared with you, and how are we doing?
Well, we're doing very well, as you alluded to when we started our podcast today. And I'm very grateful for that, but I always stay very humble to the fact that could change. We're always watching, looking, assessing, and always staying on top of what we're doing. And I think that's paramount to our success. We don't become overconfident in that success. So when you say about, personal and professional, I think when you alluded to that my son is a freshman here, I have this, professional aspect of wanting to be our university being successful, but also the personal feeling of being a mother. And for anyone who is watching who's a parent, I have that. I balance that and I package that frequently every day. And I think that's something that has really emerged throughout this process. We went through our beginning conversations with parents and students, and there was this fear of reopening or coming back. And what does that look like? And what does that look like in higher education? And as we were having those discussions, what was also happening is K through 12 is opening. So there were, how are we going to be doing that? We were the first to do that, and then K through 12 following. So a lot of questions about contact tracing. How are we going to implement these processes over at Stony Brook University? Are we going to be working in parallel? Are we going to be working, alone as opposed to the Department of Health? And we had to convey that to our families, our students. So there was fear. And I think that what I've seen is that fear, although it is still there, it has dissipated, and there has become this emerging feeling of comfort that Stony Brook and our surrounding community is able to go out, enjoy activities, still maintain the social distancing, facial coverings, but that there is an element of success and safety that is prevalent amongst our campus.
Yeah, I think that those are great points. And Shelley, I think from your perspective, certainly it's been an interesting several weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, Larry. And actually, what I was going to say was very similar to what Marissa was talking about, which is the sense that we were hearing from many students that they were tentative about returning to their academics, about whatever that meant for them, whether it was actually returning to campus or if it was just returning remotely, and what that was going to look like, and very tentative about what the world looks like right now and what their worlds look like. But what we've been hearing since students have been back and over the last 7 weeks is that they've really been able to lean in to the practices and the policies that the university has put in place for their safety and for the safety of the community, to continue their education. And that, I'm very optimistic about that, because I think we are hearing from students that they're much less tentative, and they've started to get into a rhythm a little bit more than I think that they had in the past. And we're seeing a lot of utilization of academic resources on campus, which I think is great. And I think, for any listeners out there, student listeners, please continue to do that if you are, and if you haven't, continue to, please take advantage of it, because, part of my role, and you mentioned about roles in particular, my position has always been dedicated to student success. And I think that actually says a lot about the university, prior to this moment, that the university dedicated a position to student success. And so many of us work in success anyway. But my role really moving into this was to try to align those academic support structures within this current moment for students and what it looks like for students right now, which is very different. And so, it's incredibly beneficial when we see students taking advantage of those support structures, and we continue to encourage students to do that. So I'm very optimistic about the semester and student experiences so far.
Yeah, and we're going to get into a little bit about fatigue, Zoom fatigue, and mask fatigue, all the new vernacular that we've created over the last several months. But Rick, from picking up from Shelley's point, I think the semester has gone swimmingly in many ways. But from can you share some personal experiences, or some things that students are, the feedback that you're getting?
Sure, absolutely. And again, to echo what Shelley and Marissa talked about, we're in week 7, and I was this morning prepping for this podcast today. I thought week 7, in so many ways, it's gone by so quickly. But we're in such a great place. And, the good news that we just talked about right before we came on air is that we have 0 students in quarantine or isolation on our campus. And so
it's amazing.
It's really a testament to the incredible partnership among faculty, students, and staff to make this all work. And so all the preparation that was done, all the plans put in place, and even needing to alter plans as we've gone, as we've seen things happen and changes, and we've been able to manage that successfully. And I think in my role, what I want to share directly with all the students listening today is how much we are so grateful to you, because really you can make any policy you want in the world. But in fact, what makes this work is the fact that students care enough about each other in the community to want to follow the rules. And so when I walk around campus and drive home at night and look around, everyone's wearing their face covering, and everyone's practicing social distancing. And to me, those are strong indicators that people who've said to me in various meetings, Zoom or in person, that we want the campus to stay open. We want to prove everyone else that we can do this. And I'm just incredibly proud of what our students have done to make that a reality.
Yeah, certainly all of us and many others who are not here, the members of our planning committees and task forces, have invested a lot of time. So we have a personal stake, and it's sort of we have all our own little countdowns, I'm sure, little calendars and checking off the days. But there are so many people who never thought we would even get to open, right? And then once we open, that invariably the coinciding of K-12 opening up and the businesses beginning to open up, and as the region started to open, we were susceptible to what was happening in the outside world and everything that's being done here. To your point about the facial coverings, I remember in some of the early meetings when we were planning on designing and ordering the facial coverings for the whole campus, and thinking that was going to be our biggest challenge, was getting people to wear them and the enforcement of it, and we haven't had that at all. And I think it's a testament certainly to students' commitment, for sure.
It's always interesting to me to think about what becomes cultural norms. And I think on our campus very early on, it became that part of the culture every day. And I think, again, from a safety standpoint, we know the data shares that it really makes an important difference, protect you and the person you're around. And I think that's such an important piece of what this entire puzzle we've tried to piece together over the last several months.
Yeah, I think it's a great analogy. And we talk about it in some of our meetings about the tools in the toolbox. And we're just about ready to launch yet another tool
Yes.
in an effort to have, as we think about health and safety as the layers of an onion, we want to have as many layers as possible. So, Marissa, do you want to talk a little bit about where we're headed this week? And
Sure. So as you know, Stony Brook University has been doing COVID nasopharyngeal testing for our students, and we offer that to our employees. We are now bringing on part of our toolbox is saliva testing. This takes literally less than a minute to do. We send it off to a lab. We will get results expeditiously, and then the results will fall into our usual process of identifying anyone who's positive, contacting anyone who's been in close or proximate contact through our parameters and guidelines, and collaborating with our Department of Health, and isolating and quarantining anyone. So we are very excited. We are starting this week. We've been training our staff. We are launching this in a very aggressive, and when I say aggressive manner is, because this takes such simplistic time to complete, we really believe that we can be very aggressive in our testing efforts. And we're going to start small, but we are going to ramp up rather quickly with our testing efforts. So we're very excited about this.
yeah, and for those who are listening, from a health perspective, from an epidemiological perspective, why is that? What's the advantage to doing that in conjunction with what we're already doing, and conjunction with, and I attribute a large part of our success, and this has come up in many different places and listservs, our requirement to have our resident students test negative before they moved in. I will stand by that until this is over. That put us in a much different position than a lot of our peer institutions, to our credit. So how does what's the advantage to increasing this population from a testing perspective?
Well, I think, there's some students, there's some populations that have had some adverse reactions to nasopharyngeal testing. So it's not always the best mechanism for testing for some people. So we've had those experiences, especially with frequency of testing. A nasopharyngeal test isn't a terrible experience if you're going to not do it as frequently as you want to do that in a surveillance type of program. So with, doing it more frequently, you really want to have something that has ease of use. And with saliva type of testing, the ease of use is like I said, very simplistic. It's non-invasive. It's really just swabbing the inner cheeks of your mouth. You avoid your teeth, and it takes literally 15 seconds. It becomes completely deactivated once it hits the reagent. So it's minimal PPE use. Our SUNY partners are using this. We're not the first SUNY to do it. And I think that it's been proven. It has, emergency use authorization for this. And, we're moving in this fashion. And I would like to say, I think all different types of COVID testing has its place. I mean, we have point of care antigen testing that we're doing now over at Student Health Services. We have our PCR testing, that's nasopharyngeal. It's not even that one is better than another. I think that the more you're able to offer your campus community, that your employees, your students, your faculty have some ability to have some choices, but also we can get that experience. And then as time progresses, be able to offer these different modalities. So right now what we're doing is we're really selecting that testing modality for the population, but I'm hopeful that as time progresses that we can be a little maybe possibly a little more flexible in how we do things. But right now, because of how we're doing it and we're launching new testing modalities, it's a little bit more population, I'll say, specific.
Yeah, and I think while we continue to do that, that's sort of the measures we have in place to have a safe campus, to continue to have a safe campus. But I think it's important, Rick and Shelley, from both perspectives, to talk about what does campus look like, and what is the campus like? It's certainly different, but I'd like to highlight some of the successes we have in having some traditional activities and things that are happening on campus, even though we're still doing things very, very cautiously.
Sure. So this is my podcast plug for the Quark app, as I always do. I feel like I'm the Quark guy, CORQ in the App Store. That really is a great way for the entire campus community to know in real time what's happening. And I think it's a great tool. We implemented it starting a couple of years ago. And I think in the world of COVID, it's become even more important. And one of the features that I love about it is it allows you now, it's all a reservation system. So that actually goes back to the point about ensuring safety within the programs that we do, whether they're inside or outside programs. We've certainly taken full advantage. We've been very lucky to have nice weather. for several weeks on end. And so that's allowed us to do outdoor movies, outdoor fitness classes. I know some of the residential quads did outdoor karaoke one weekend. So lots of different ways to still connect with students. Again, still maintain social distance, but make sure that people can be together and still get to know each other, build friendships, and really feel part of campus life. So I will say, though, relative to other years, if you've not been on the campus in a while, it is quiet. And so I will say and this goes to the academic part, it makes it a great place to study. And I think that those environments, that there's a lot of space on campus to really spread out, to have your space, to kind of have focused time on your academic work. But again, we've really worked hard to have a lot of events, and particularly for all of our students who are remote, of which we have several thousand, the virtual events have been a really important way to connect. And so while we know Zoom fatigue is a real thing, and I'm glad we're on Facebook Live, so we're not on Zoom, we're on Facebook Live
anything
today.
But Zoom.
Something
I'll take
different.
anything but Zoom.
But this is an opportunity also because I think the connection for remote students is very, very important, because you are a Seawolf. You are a member of our community, and this is an important way to stay connected through all our clubs and organizations, through the Career Center, the virtual job fairs that they've been doing, so many different events to connect students and really still build their skills and experiences in important ways for the job market, graduate school, and other opportunities after Stony Brook.
I want to say, too, that I think staying connected to campus is looking different now for different students, right? It's taking some different forms, but I also think that the forms are really flexible depending on what students need right now, right? What their situations are. To your point about the studying, I mean, we were in a advisory group with a group of students where they talked about, that even if they have all online classes, they're actually coming to campus just to study because they want to be connected to the space. So even the space itself is something that they still want to feel like they're a part of, and that's really important. And that may be a way for students to continue to be connected. And then other students are engaging in virtual opportunities. I do want to say, just in terms of an event that I think for many of our students out there, if you were part of the undergraduate colleges at some point when you were a first-year student, the Undergraduate College Commons Day is actually coming up. And so we have continued with that this year, and that's an enormous event for first-year students. It's going to be virtual for the first time, but it's almost 20 years that we've had a first-year reading program, and we are continuing it as part of the tradition that we have here at Stony Brook for students.
And it's funny, we was having an unrelated meeting this morning where we're trying to balance some of those traditional aspects and to do it in a safe way. And with virtually no exception, we haven't found anything so far, knock wood on the table, that we haven't been able to just modify or tweak. And it might not look exactly how it was, but I think in many ways, certainly from the academic perspective, but in all the things we're doing, student life and student engagement, there's some way to do it. And I think that and our students are, from what I've seen, committed to doing it and happy, as shameless plug for our dashboard, our COVID dashboard. We had the Chancellor was here 2 weeks ago and had made mention of that in his press conference about that, the A+ that we got. We're very happy about that. But our ability to be transparent and our ability to communicate out, that message is being carried by the students. I mean, I think you've certainly seen that.
And can I add one other thing I neglected to mention under Marissa's area is the recreation and wellness area. And for students who aren't aware, that space now reopened.
Yes.
Obviously, that was based upon New York State guidance, but we've set up the operation so that students can sign up for 90-minute intervals. So for any students who are concerned, there's actually a full cleaning that happens in between those 90-minute intervals. So students can go on the recreation website and sign up for their time slots. And again, we have capacity to welcome more students in that space. So we just want to encourage it. There's a great recreation room that's been set up with a lot of video arcade games and ping pong and foosball and other activities. So again, we're really looking and providing ways for students for their own mental and physical health as well, because we know this has continued to be a toll for many students, and this is an opportunity to bring back what we had back pre-March, but it is still in a very safe way given the schedule. So again, example of a modified service that I think is still working very well.
I think that's a great example, Rick. I think, especially when you think about the recreation, it used to historically be what we would call the gym. And when we originally reopened, this was before the guidance for New York State said gyms could be open. So we really reconverted that place to be recreation. As Rick said, ping pong tables, arcade, a place for students to have somewhere to go where they could be safe, but still engage in activities and have, communication with students. So, students that were maybe upset that they couldn't go outside and play, let's say, basketball, which is a high risk activity, they could go and recreate. And it was allowed to do that indoors. And now, even with the Department of Health coming on site and approving the gym to be open, we have the best of both worlds there. So I do think that there is opportunity for our students to go there, as Rick said, and we do see that we could definitely, there could be more increased capacity. So I definitely stress for students and any parents who are watching to tell your students to come. We staff it daily, open to 10 p.m., and it's a really great place. So if you haven't seen it, check it out.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, and I want to actually ask each of you. We took a very conservative approach to the fall, to the semester, to the spring semester, to the fall semester, as it relates to classroom size, as it relates to overall density, as it relates to staggered work schedules. Everything we did was, a lot of it was being conservative based on guidance, and a lot of it was conservative based on no one was quite sure what the guidance was going to be, and just to be nimble and everything
Absolutely.
else. So as we start to look and we see how our success was, and I'll start with Shelley. As we're planning for winter and spring, what, if anything, are we doing differently, or do you think we have, take our best practices, but is there any way we can continue to adapt and grow with how things are going? And then, what you think?
Yeah, I think, as we look ahead to spring, I think we had actually mentioned last time on the last podcast that there had already been discussions about what spring might look like from an academic perspective and in terms of the academic calendar. And a lot of that information, right, at least the sort of initial scenario in terms of that information has come out and has been discussed. And I think, if people have been following, then that, most of the courses over winter will be online. And for the spring semester, we're going to have a little bit of a later start, right, around February 1st or on February 1st. With no spring break in terms of the spring semester. And I think what students are going to see is that hopefully, right, that the spring semester is going to be very similar to fall as far as like class sizes online, but with the hope that if the rates continue in the direction that they're continuing, that we will be able to have more in-person opportunities for classes and more in-person opportunities on campus in general. And so I think that's something that folks are really hopeful about. But I think the thing that's been great and that's really been important for everyone to understand is that kind of planning really did start even well before, even in the summer looking at spring, but still not being able to make any decisions, but creating different kinds of scenarios based on what might happen in the moment. But I think people are very optimistic in general as far as the spring is concerned and keeping an eye on the rates, and hopefully we'll be able to increase even more in-person classes.
And, I'd be remiss if I didn't specifically call out and acknowledge our faculty that have been really working. We have any curveball we could have thrown at them as far as planning and not knowing, and they've been fantastic in thinking about the best way possible, the safest way possible to be able to continue.
Yeah, and their level of engagement that they've tried to create in the online classes. Many of our faculty participated, as you know, many of our faculty participated over the summer on a multi-week boot camp that was offered by the Center for Learning and Teaching to try to create engaging, high quality, online classes. And that was really a dedicated effort on their part.
Yeah, definitely. And Rick, what do you think about, as we begin to move forward, continue to move forward, how does winter, spring 2021 compare to fall 2020 and from your perspective?
Sure. So one important thing for all of our students to consider is that particularly for the Thanksgiving break, while we go to fully remote instruction right after Thanksgiving, if any students do leave who whether residential, living off campus, and come back to New York after Thanksgiving, if you do come from a restricted state or from overseas, there is that still requirement for the precautionary 14-day quarantine. So we really want students to still be advised of that. We had operated in that fashion starting back in August, so the same rules would apply. And then also as we look forward to winter and spring, same rules would apply too. So again, we are planning communication to our resident students. who will be living on campus in the spring about offering that same precautionary quarantine. And similar, again, if it worked once, we think it can work again. And so we would operate in the same way for the start of the spring semester in that February 1st timeframe. I think that, again, a lot of it does go back, I think, to the academic schedule. And if we do and are able to offer more in-person classes, we expect that we'll have greater demand for the residence halls. Fortunately, we have about 4,700 students in our residence halls now, but we do have the capacity for many more. So if students, as they sign up for classes, if they're interested in then living on campus, we will certainly welcome our students to do that, and we'll follow up with communication on that. Because the residence halls, they're such a vibrant place of activity for our campus, and while, again, we would still maintain safety, in many cases we have doubles that are serving as single rooms for students to reduce the density, and we'd still certainly focus on that. But this is another opportunity, I think, to start building back the campus density in ways that still keep us safe.
Yeah, and I think that's important as well, because the infection rate luckily continues to be hovering around 1%, 1.2. We start to see a few hot spots in some zip codes, and the governor had a press conference about it, and in the city they're taking some action, scaling back as we had mentioned. But for us, a testament to all the things that we're doing, we continue to stay there. So Marissa, as we get into flu season and we have this 8-week period of time where one semester will end and the next, where do you think, why are we doing that, first of all, and how does that help position us for hopefully a successful start to the spring semester?
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up. So this is going to be a pivotal time, and it's going to be time that we continue utilizing the processes we put in place. So one thing is our Campus Clear app. So we currently have our employees and our students completing an app before you come to campus that pretty much designates, are you clear of COVID-19 symptoms? And a lot of those symptoms are the same as influenza, A or B. I think that's how we're going to keep our campus safe, is that we need to continue those practices, because there's processes that are in place for whether an employee or a student screens in, that they can speak to a healthcare professional and then determine whether or not they could proceed to come to campus or do they need testing. And there's testing available for both. So we have testing available for influenza, we have testing available for COVID, and we have tools in place to differentiate between the two. Both are contagious. So we care about both, obviously. One you have a vaccine for, one we don't. We're currently ramping up our vaccine efforts. So we're vaccinating our students at Student Health Services. We've partnered with CVS, so we have them on site. CVS is able to vaccinate our students and our faculty. And what we're seeing is that with our vaccination clinics, we're seeing more and more people coming out for them. So I think it's leaning into the guidance and the practices that we've put in place that will support our efforts to remain our rates low, and identifying that, again, the guiding principles, if you're not well, do not come to campus. We've always said that pre-pandemic, but it's never been more important now. Continuing our surveillance efforts for COVID-19, our testing will be important. And I think also what will also be interesting to see, which is completely outside of Stony Brook University, is what will be available to us in the healthcare industry in terms of vaccination. So, there's a lot of promises out there for 2021. What will be available, and we don't know that. I think Stony Brook University has done to the max what we could do in terms of policy, administration, building the partnerships with our students. And I really support that, and I hope that the fatigue of any type of mask wearing or, what we say about Zooming or just being tired of being in a pandemic doesn't get the best of us, because we need to continue this throughout the spring. And we've pushed hard, and again, we've been successful, but we also, to increase that success and to really overcome this pandemic, we really need to have some healthcare efforts and some, industry efforts to push us forward.
At the same time, while all this is happening, we're talking a lot about COVID, but the world is still, as you've alluded to, sort of happening outside of the COVID environment. So, Rick, as we 30 days before Election Day, and certainly just in light of what's happening socially throughout, the country and the world, it's particularly difficult, for not having the face-to-face, not having the ability to to engage and to make sure that we're having civil dialogues and we're having exchange of ideas. So as we begin to get the T-minus 30 days, do you want to talk about some of the things that we're doing and we're thinking about? And
Sure, I'm not counting. It's T-minus 28, actually.
I lost 2 days.
But who's counting? So yeah, it's interesting having thought back to the 2016 election and even the 2012 election, and I think the role of a college campus in the political dialogue is so important. That's a core value of higher education. We're here to debate, to engage in issues, discuss topics that are important in our lives, and really determine. This is a chance for our students for whom this may be their first time that they're voting in an election. They can make their voice and their vote count in that process. And so the normal way of having, even in the past, we've had candidates come to campus. We've had different political ideologies have discussions on stage and engage students in those conversations. That's happening, but in a different way. And one highlight I do want to share is obviously our Center for Civic Justice, which has just been doing incredible work, both at the front end, working with Shelley's team at orientation to register students. Because I think part of when you think about creating a culture among a college student body, it's really making sure that our students know the importance and their right to vote is very important. And so that's been a huge effort. And I'm so proud of the Civic Justice team for all that they've done. Stephen Adelson and all the interns working together to increase the voter registration. And then the next piece of that is, over the last several months, is discussions about important topics and issues of the day. And certainly, having the right to vote is one thing, but being an informed voter is the other part of the work that we do. And so we know that there's a lot of political rhetoric, a lot happening in the world, and I think part of it is to be an informed news consumer and to really separate fact from fiction through dialogues. And again, the academic classes is another really good way that happens. One thing that the team is doing, if folks aren't aware, this Friday, October 9th, is the last day to register to vote in New York State. So we encourage, if you haven't registered to vote as a New Yorker, you should do that. Secondly, that we are actually a polling site. So on election day on November 3rd, if you're in this district, you can actually vote at the Rec and Wellness Center is going to be your polling location on campus. And then on November 4th, the Center for Civic Justice is going to continue their series, which is called Community Dialogues. And that dialogue will be focused on post-election. And I think it's important, if people are obviously watching the news, reading, it's very likely we will not know who the president is on November 3rd because of absentee ballots. And so I think we need our community to be prepared, that most people think the normal chain of events that you know who the president is. And if that doesn't happen, we're going to be in a period of uncertainty as we have been through COVID. And I think we just need to prepare ourselves for that and then to work through that through continued conversation. But I think, Larry, you said at the top, I think civility and discourse is something that we want to make sure that we're role modeling, and that we instill in our community as important part of what it means to be at Stony Brook, that we listen to each other, we learn. And I will invoke a wonderful quote said by one of my graduate faculty members when I studied at Vermont. And he always asked you to look at it from the other perspective. And his quote was, "Find the truth in what you oppose and the error in what you espouse." And I've always taken that quote to heart because I think it means so much about looking at things from alternate perspectives, kind of pivot and shift and look from a different point of view. And again, that's, I think, what higher education, that's a core function of higher ed. We are to look at things from alternate viewpoints.
Yeah, and as one of our learned colleagues used to say, this the quintessential public forum is the academic mall and is the academic campus. And it's tough to embrace that, in the virtual world, but I think we're certainly putting a lot of effort into doing that. If you're just joining us, we're here today with my colleagues and friends, Marissa Bisiani, Rick Gatto, and Shelley Germana, talking about what we're doing to welcome back students to a safe, secure campus this fall, what we've done in this special episode of Stony Brook University's Beyond the Expected podcast. We encourage questions from social media, from Facebook Live. We're happy to engage in those and to answer those now. And actually one of the ones, or at least some discussion beforehand, was about just pivoting back to what's happening on campus, is about isolation and quarantine. And as Rick mentioned earlier at the top of the hour, right now there are no students in quarantine. However, there was some question as to what happens and what does it look like academically? What does it look like from a resident's life perspective if that were to happen? So you wanted to talk through maybe a hypothetical how it looks? And
I think I'm going to turn to Marissa to she'll get the ball rolling, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I think let's actually walk through it. What does it look like from the standpoint, right, of a student?
I mean, I think it's important that I'll start from the medical end, because I think it's important that the campus community know that a positive COVID result is actually considered a critical lab result. So even if Student Health Services is closed, and let's say it's a Saturday, we are open till 1 on Saturday and Sunday, but let's say it's 4 o'clock, and there's a positive result that comes in, it's not that we get that result on a Monday. Our medical director is notified. They have her home, her cell, and she is hunted down. So we get notified 24/7 of critical lab results, and a COVID-19 positive is considered a critical lab. And no, we will not, wake a student up at 2 a.m., but we do work around the clock, and we will identify a positive student. And when we identify a positive student, there's parameters that we use. And I'm not going to go too granular, but it's the same parameters that the Department of Health uses. So as we are notified, labs are required to notify the Department of Health, but we also notify the Department of Health. And we apply those parameters to see a look back period. Has the student been in class? Who has the student been in contact with? And we do some preliminary work even before we contact the student, or it could be a faculty or employee person, whoever it is on campus that's positive. And then we contact that person, and what we call that's the contact tracing part. And what we differentiate is between what is isolation and what is quarantine. And isolation is when someone is infectious and they need to be isolated or separated from someone. And quarantine means that you're at risk for becoming infected. So that could be someone who is a close or proximate contact to someone who is infectious. And again, I don't want to get too granular, but these are the concepts that are applied in contact tracing. So our team that's trained in contact tracing goes out and starts interviewing and starts determining who, obviously we know who the infectious person is who needs to be isolated. So that person is identified, and we have a process in place where we have designated housing on campus that we have taken offline. And we have pretty much designated each room to have certain things in them that have made it very, very comfortable for our student. So if a student, let's say, is positive, not someone who is a commuter student or someone who is an employee that lives off campus, if someone who is a resident student, we have secured on-campus housing that is specific to someone's needs for daily living. So it has a refrigerator in there. It has a landline phone in there in case of an emergency. Most students use their own mobile phones. We deliver food for the student. We provide laundry service for the student. Pretty much it's really, we've had people who live off campus say, can I come to your isolation housing? It's very nice. We have staff that are dedicated to the needs of the student for 24/7. So any concerns that need to be addressed, family or the student can contact. And that's for both students that are placed in isolation, but for any students that need to quarantine. So anyone who has been identified as being a close or approximate contact also is offered that type of housing. What's different between the two is how long you need to stay in that housing, because there's different parameters in place for someone who's infectious as opposed to someone who's in quarantine. However, what we do know is that you can't be living with roommates and so forth. You cannot attend class. So there's also academic support that I'll let Rick speak to, and you, Shelley, as well, that we provide to our students while they are in isolation or quarantine. One of the other things that is happening is this collaboration with the Department of Health. So the Department of Health also has a contact tracing team. So we work with them. We, again, with the look back period. So if somebody was in a class, let's say, there's always that big concern. Well, what if I had a face-to-face class and there was someone who was COVID positive? These guidelines are applied, and we actually provide the Department of Health classroom size, who's in the class, what's the MERV rating, air exchanges, and the Department of Health, not Stony Brook University, but the Department of Health will make that determination whether or not an entire classroom would, let's say, need to be quarantined.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you and I both know all too well. Late nights, early mornings, weekends, to assuage any fears that may be there are a ton of people who are focused on the contact tracing process, and we're working hand in glove with the Department of Health. And some faculty and staff will say, I think I might have been, and how come I didn't get notified? I just want to reassure everyone that there's a group of highly trained professionals inside this university and outside that we're working with to make sure that if you need to know, you'll know. And we're working overtime to make sure that the individual themselves and anybody who may have had close contact, it's a very streamlined process. But I'm glad you mentioned that.
And to add to that, we've actually hired full-time contact tracers.
Yes.
So these are actually this is their exclusive responsibility, and they are well trained, again, through the Johns Hopkins training. And again, I mean, fortunately, we haven't had to put much into action of late, but again, we are prepared should that be needed.
Absolutely. And I think, that's what we had said when we first started is, we've learned. So, when we first started this, I started training my nurses and my physicians to do this work. And then we realized, I think we need dedicated resources. So that's how Stony Brook, we do this work. We start and we realize, let's try it this way and let's try it that way. All ways are successful, but it's just how we could do it a little bit better and have continual improvement. I want to stress that even if you are not in our residential housing, and let's say you're a commuter or an employee that is, positive or told that you need to quarantine, our healthcare professionals or our contact tracers will actually talk with you if you have a vulnerable person that lives in your home, because you can quarantine or isolate in home. And that sometimes is an option. We've had students say, I really don't want to do this at Stony Brook. I want to be with my mom, my dad. I don't feel comfortable. And that's fine. And I want to also stress, we have support counselors that follow these students every day. It's not like, you're just in a room by yourself. Not ideal to do that, but because of how infectious this virus is, that's the guidelines. Right. So it's like, well, how do you balance all this? And it's been, I'd say a dance of how you do that. But I want to stress that even if you have to do this and you're a commuter or you're an employee, there's conversations that we get, we talk to you about, how do you, go to the bathroom? How do you keep your home and your environment safe so that anyone you live with does not become infected? And we've had such success stories where we've had COVID positive individuals who live in homes with other people and roommates who have never become infected. So I think that those types of conversations are very important. So, the one thing we always encourage people is that if you are positive, and let's say you don't get tested within Stony Brook University, you still have to let us know. Because if we don't know, we can't help you and we can't give you that advice. Yes, the Department of Health will eventually know and they will call you, but it's also important that we both work together and we can also spend maybe a little bit more time than or sometimes, we can get to you even before the DOH. So I think that, letting us know is important. When we talk about fear, sometimes people have fear, I don't want to let my job know, or I don't want to let my school know. There might be some academic repercussions. But I think, Shelley, I'll turn to you. There really are none.
No. And actually what I was going to say is I think, obviously the health piece of it being a really big concern for students and faculty and the, the wellness or the impact of the virus on their health. I think that the second most thing that we're hearing as a concern from students and faculty is what happens next? Like, how do I let my faculty member know? How do I navigate that, right, if it's the student as well as the faculty member? And so I think, maybe if we could just walk through, like Rick, I know the student support team is heavily involved in that. And so I think for our students, it would help to know, okay, so now you've had the contact, with student health services and that process is playing out. Now what's sort of the next piece of it before it even gets to the faculty member, right?
Right. So once the contact tracing process happens and connecting with Mercer's team in student health, our student support team does take then kind of the baton to then do the contact with the students' faculty members. And so we send out communication, and then COVID or not, this is our normal process for supporting students if they're going to be out of the classroom. This is really an in-person classes for at least 5 days or more. And this semester, it's an odd example because we have so many online classes. We would communicate with faculty if a student isn't feeling well enough to even participate in online classes. So there's a conversation that happens with the student support team and the student to say, here's our next step in the process. We do not let anybody know. We hold in confidence that the student will be out for X period of time, but we don't indicate the reason why. And again, and that goes back to then the contact tracing piece, so that if the faculty member or others were exposed, that would be happening through that separate process. So student support is intended to be just that. It's supporting the student to make sure there's no real interruption or negative impact of not being able to go to in-person classes. And when we worked through this process, even back in the summer to identify our plan, we worked very closely with academic affairs and the provost's office to make sure that faculty would be accommodating with that and be flexible, because these circumstances are so unknown. And we didn't want a student, if they need to be out for really a 2-week period of time, to lose their ability to still do well in the class.
Right, or feel like they can't get tested, or feel like they're not feeling well, but they still go to class because they're concerned about, any kind of academic repercussions. And so I do think it's really important for students to understand that, there are no academic repercussions. We want you to get tested, right? We want you to, take care of yourself. We want the community to be safe, and faculty are making arrangements with students so that can happen. So.
If I could add one other piece I think is so important about as we look past week 7 and work through the end of the semester and then into the spring, it's really the situation of asymptomatic student cases that I think is what I'll say keeps us up at night too, because as we have had the test, and Marissa can speak better to this than I can, when we look at the through our surveillance testing, the vast majority of cases are asymptomatic cases. So part of my ask to all of our students is don't be complacent, because knowing most of these cases were asymptomatic really means that they wouldn't even know. And so that's why the surveillance testing is so critically important to making sure they're identifying people early on who could potentially spread it. And that's why we ramped up the testing to be able to do that. And so, as we start now with the saliva pool testing with our commuter students later this week and into the next few weeks, commuter students, as you receive communication to participate in this, please do that. You may wake up in the morning and think, I'm perfectly fine. I don't need to be tested. Please go get tested. It's really important to keep our infection rates low and be manageable by having everyone participate in this. So that's really important to realize that the asymptomatic part of this is what we're trying to dance around and make sure we have a good plan in place to work. The other thing I wanted to mention that we've been very fortunate, while we've done a lot of great work with campus residences and student health services to ensure that students in isolation or quarantine housing, receive the care and they need for that period of time. We have not had any cases of students who've been quarantined actually turn positive. So again, I think that's because of the very quick action to move people. So that's real. Once we learn, we act very quickly. So again, having students respond, if we call, you got to be at the phone. We'll knock on your door. We need you to respond quickly, because that's also what reduces any spread.
Yeah, and having that capacity, it certainly wasn't, we didn't just magically snap our fingers and have it. There was a lot of work that went into identifying the space and getting it ready. And I can tell you, your colleagues from around the nation that are in many ways jealous of the capacity that we have built in, and the certainly modeling some of the infrastructure we have and the notification process, and just how, we really tried to think about everything that we could. And so far it's working out pretty well for us. I don't know if either Rick or Shelley, you could answer one of the questions that have come in regarding music department plans for next semester and in-person performances. I mean, I could speak sort of anecdotally about it, but I don't know if you can address that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it was really hard in particular for the music department this past fall with the performances. And, although I don't have any firm answers for spring, because I think, I want to assure everyone that with music classes, or with with really all of our classes, that the office of the provost, the dean's areas, the academic departments are engaged in really meaningful discussions about what that might look like for spring. And the hope is that we will be able to expand the in-person offerings, and hopefully for the music department that will mean in-person offerings. But a lot of that is really going to depend on where we're at. And so what I would say to that is that there's a lot of conversations happening, a lot of planning happening, and people are very hopeful, but it's still right now is going to be a wait and see for many of our classes.
And it's interesting too. The timing is such that we discussed it this morning on one of our task force calls. Is the CDC just coming out with the recent guidance about airborne spread and transmission and what that looks like, and in conjunction with some, whether it's a wind instrument or just so there's some challenges there that we're still, there's a lot of the unknowns. Yeah. But I think as we're preparing too, back to Rick's point about not getting complacent and just, we have a system that's working. The students are doing everything they need to do. Our faculty and staff are doing it. Everything is working very well. And we just want to try. We know everyone's tired. We know it's been a long haul, really long haul for a lot of us. Marissa and I get to have vacation after December 1st. But, but we seriously, it's we've come so far, and we really don't want to go back. And we just encourage everyone to just try to, find their second wind and have that stamina. But as we come towards the sort of the top of the hour here, I just wanted to give everyone a few minutes to to sum up and wrap up, or make some closing remarks or some closing thoughts, and think about what's the takeaway message for for the audience, or what should we be thinking about. Marissa, I'll start with you.
To me first.
I'm trying to work the dais. I'm trying to work around.
There's so much to say. I think Rick pointed out something that is important that isn't touched upon often, which is the fact that our Stony Brook University cases have been largely asymptomatic. I would have to say maybe one or two haven't been. And that was very shocking to our clinical team. But the reason why I just want to hone in on that and stress that significance is because what Rick had said was that, you feel fine. And even if you're doing your campus clear, you will pass your campus clear. You will come to campus and you will think everything is fine. And there is something that is very unique about the age group of college health, is that the students are asymptomatic. And that's was so, I would say, I don't want to lose sight of that, was really the hesitancy of reopening schools, was that there was this fear that these asymptomatic students would be potentially infecting others who were vulnerable. And we have not seen that at Stony Brook. But I want to say we've also seen a significant compliance, and a huge, huge thank you to our students for continuing to be tested. I'm not sure, and I can't speak to other schools about their testing surveillance, but I do look at our compliance rates, and our compliance rates have been just remarkable. I send out reminders to be tested, but honestly, I feel pretty confident that even if I didn't send them, students are coming. So I say, please continue to do that. And again, as Rick stressed, we're going to this now saliva type of testing. And again, it's for convenience, ease of use. I encourage you to take advantage of it. It is completely free, no cost to the student, no cost to the employee. Really, truly no reason not to do it. So, this is how we keep our campus community safe. Continue to wear your facial coverings, continue to perform hand hygiene. You could never perform too much hand hygiene. So your hands may be dry, carry some, hand lotion with you, but just continue doing that. And as exhausting or tired you may be, we're in it together. And that's how we will continue to do possibly the things that we just saw with the question of, opening for music and continuing to enjoy each other's company. Thank you, Marissa. Rick?
So in my role as Dean of Students, I want to highlight two students very quickly. And one speaks to Larry, as you said earlier, about how things kind of have slowly opened up in a good way. And the first I'm going to mention is James, who I met a couple years ago, who's a senior. Some of you may have seen he was actually profiled because back when the pandemic was at its peak, he actually reworked iPads so that at the hospital and nursing homes, family members who would not be able to be in the space could talk to loved ones. And so he took that upon himself and just is an amazing student. And so this was an opportunity after seeing him on Zoom over the summer and connecting with him, we actually had a socially distanced Starbucks meeting about a week ago. So I knew that was progress.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
That was very nice to see him in person. And the second student I wanted to highlight, his name is Decker, and he is actually gotten recently hired because as part of our saliva pool testing, and this is, trying to make, lemonade out of lemons, we hired students to now help in the capacity as greeters and work in the pool testing area that we've set up. And these are our students who are science majors. And so this experience, the lemonade, is they're now putting this incredible experience on their resume. And so Decker and other students that we've hired in this function, if you come to SAC Ballroom A for your saliva test, you'll be able to see folks. And again, this is a great experience for them to get kind of the hands-on experience. And I'm so grateful. Again, this is a huge partnership. And the fact that students are working with us in this, I think helps and speaks volumes about their commitment to the institution.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Rick. Shelley?
So there's two things that I want to mention, one of which Rick kind of briefly mentioned, but I want to make sure that students know and families know that the advanced registration period is starting on November 2nd. It's really important that students take advantage of their registration appointment more than ever. And what that means is registering during the time that you have. Don't wait. That's really important because you want to make sure that you can get into the classes that you need, that you have, especially if there's going to be online or in-person formats, right? Whatever is right for your experiences. So you really want to try to take advantage of that. And the other part of it too is use your experiences from this semester and your experiences in your online and your in-person classes to figure out what works for you and help inform your choice. Because I think what we saw, at least what we were seeing, was a lot of students just really wanted online courses because for some of them it seemed more convenient, and that's a perfectly fine choice to make, because I think that's important when you're thinking about what's right for you as far as your course schedule is concerned. But what we were also hearing from them same students later is that when they ended up with one in-person class, that was really the class that they felt most connected to, right, for that particular student. Whereas for other students, they felt really connected to their online classes, and it's been sort of the best semester that they feel like they're having because they have more flexibility in terms of their different environments that they're in. So I just wanted to mention that in particular. And the second thing is just to please use resources. Success is taking many different forms right now for students. And for a lot of us, I feel like it's felt like we're not necessarily in control of all areas of our life because of the pandemic. But one thing that you can control as a student is getting involved in the resources and allowing those resources to help you. So academic services, all services on campus, right, they're fully operational, those support services in different forms, in a variety of in-person and virtual formats. So take control by getting involved in those services and allowing those services to benefit you in the way they're designed.
Great. Thank you. And I can probably feel that there's a question that just came in regarding tours. Any way to really, with small groups, it's hard to get a feel for dorm rooms, classrooms, et cetera, virtual. We know that. We appreciate that. And I can tell you that we've been talking about it since before the semester started, and we continue to talk about it. And I will bring that back to our senior leadership team for discussion this week, and we'll see. We know that it's hard to get that that tangible feel. We're doing the best we can with some of the virtual tours and some of the the technological leveraging we have done for tours, but we do know that it's simply not the same. And I'll just say, if you do have additional questions that we perhaps didn't get to, visit the Stony Brook University Coming Back Safe and Strong website. There's a portal there where you can submit questions to the many people, everyone here, as well as those on our leadership team. And just from my own personal perspective, I'll just add my thanks to my colleagues again for joining me, for sure. But from the planning perspective, we really started. It seems like a million years ago, but it's been 8 long months, and I'm proud of the work that we've done. I'm proud of all that we've accomplished. I'm proud of the how far we've come, and I'm very confident that we'll continue to be able to push forward through the winter and into the spring semester and beyond. And at some point, we'll look back, and this will be not necessarily a distant memory, but it'll certainly make a great book someday. That's for sure. So. Thank you again to everyone for joining, and thank you for all of you who tuned in today, whether it's now through Facebook Live or at some point when you watch the recording. So I'd like to thank Marissa, Rick, and Shelley again for joining us for today's timely Beyond the Expected podcast. Coming back safe and strong, students step up, and we thank our students again. Remember, you can all do your part to help us stay safe and strong. We move through the fall semester and beyond. Go Seawolves, wash your hands, stay safe.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you.